So Scott, it's my pleasure to have you back on, man, once again, and I appreciate you coming back on, especially during this whole time of like craziness that's going on.
Yeah.
Now, you have for a long time, man, been kind of the man when it comes to like mental hacks, mental tricks. You really taught me a lot about the samurai mindset, the warrior mindset. Can you give us out here kind of number one, kind of an update, what's going on out west? And then number two, how do you think that we can deal with all of this crap that's going on? We got to deal with our families and our girls and our whatever. And how do we stay focused as warriors?
Mm-hmm. Well, Sun Tzu said that life is war. And I believe war is an acronym for we are ready. So when this type of thing happens, we're ready, man. And if we're not ready, we get ready. Ideally, a lot of people have been caught shorthanded. They talk about it, they think about it, but they didn't actually do it. And so now they're having to take action. But if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Food, water, we got that covered. Bullets, we're ready.
Yeah.
So, and it's not living in a bunker in the mountains or anything like that. It's just common sense preparation. Some food that's not perishable, dried beans, dried rice, things like that. Some water reserves. Just very common sense, basic stuff that most people take for granted. So what's going on out here is pretty much, it's a little different out where you are, I believe, in the East Coast. I know that New York and Jersey, and I think 3 big cities just kind of did a lockdown, a curfew. Things like this are going to keep developing. We need to keep our mindset strong and not fearful. Fear is not our friend. It doesn't serve us. Panic doesn't serve us. What serves us is objectivity. We're going to be objective. We're going to be practical and tactical. And we're going to analyze the data and respond to it non-emotionally. Remember I say in mental warfare, your emotional response transfers control to your attacker. It also transfers control to the circumstances. So rather than responding emotionally, we want to respond tactically. We want to make a list of everything we need. We want to calmly go about it. There are other ways to get resources. For example, I've been to grocery stores. I've been to Walmart. I've seen the aisles are clear of bread and eggs, which are perishable anyway. A lot of rice and beans, gone. But that's okay. We went to a restaurant supply store. Went there instead for these industrial rolls of toilet paper. Started think outside the box. Order things, even ordering online from Amazon, things like that. A lot of that is still in operation. You can also find out at your local stores, for example, of Vons. We have a local Vons. I found out they open at 6 a.m. So I'll be there at 5:30 to make sure we're already pretty stocked anyway. We're pretty good. I don't want just some odds and extras and staying on top of it. That's what we need to do, is just stay on top of it, think practically, think tactically, and not panicked and alarmist, because it isn't really the virus itself. It's more the fear and panic that is destroying people. People are losing jobs now. Businesses are shutting down, which I disagree with. I happen to think that's foolish. I think we need to proceed courageously. When we look at the deaths of flu, it was I think 80,000 last year, or in 2018 it was 80,000. It's 80,000 people. Do we even have 1,000 deaths yet to coronavirus? I don't know. But it's essentially a flu or a cold. And certainly while it is dangerous and should be acknowledged and should be handled diligently, it shouldn't cause this alarmist reaction. Many people have even stated, and I just saw this, I think Steve Forbes was talking about it. He said, why is it that you're saying most people get it and they're going to be fine? Young people, it's really the elderly and the sickly who are in mortal danger. So why is it, if everyone's going to be fine, that we need to panic and close schools for young people? Think about that. It kind of doesn't add up. I think the fear and panic is the number one concern, more so than the virus itself. We get new strains of cold, virus, and flu every year. Every year it warps. Flus and colds change all the time. That just happens. So I think we need to be practical and tactical and keep that mindset objective and not fearful and panic. Does that make sense?
100%. And I agree with everything that you just said. Now, let me ask you this. While we are in the midst of all of this fear and panic, it does rub off. It is the type of thing when you go to the grocery store, you're seeing those shelves empty. No matter if you're prepared or not, no matter if you're an experienced veteran warrior like yourself or just a newer guy to the martial arts and the warrior way of life, it does tend to make you feel a certain type of way. How do we stay focused and stay calm? Can you give us some good methods and tactics of going ahead and centering ourselves in these panicky times?
Absolutely, absolutely. First of all, we want to schedule. For those of you who are stuck at home, say maybe you're furloughed from work, they don't want you to come in, have a schedule. Don't just sit on your ass playing video games. Be productive. Now is the time to focus on what is important. Matter of fact, that's what a warrior and a man should be doing, is focusing on what's important at any time in history, crisis or not. Focusing on what is important. Make a list of the things you need. Think outside the box. And look, everyone's going to do a run on Costco. Everyone's going to do a run in the grocery store. So go different places, restaurant supply, things like that. Think a little bit differently outside the box. And there's still plenty of other foods as well that you can get, frozen foods and things like that. As far as the mindset goes, by focusing on what is important, by having a list and by having a schedule, it gives you a track to run on. So you're not glued to the adrenaline of checking the news every 30 seconds, right? So you want to focus on your plan. Above all, a man has a plan. So have a plan and you stick to that plan and you work that plan. Now, as we say in NLP, we have to have sensory acuity because things will change, circumstances change. It's kind of like sailing a boat. It's not a straight line from A to B. You're going to tack this way, the wind is going to hit, or there's going to be a rock and there's going to be tide, and so you have to kind of do like that. Can you see that visual I'm making? That's kind of how it goes. So it isn't necessarily a straight line. You're going to run into obstacles. And we learn to overcome those obstacles and change our plan as needed. And like Bruce Lee said, be like water. Water goes around, goes under, goes through, and crashes. It does what it has to do to get where it wants to go. But we certainly want to contain our minds by focusing on what is important, by making a list, by looking at things objectively. And it's a matter of training the mind. Pivot away from emotional thinking. You can always ask yourself, does this thinking really serve me? And at any time you find yourself thinking in a fearful way, in a limiting way, just ask yourself, does this serve me? And then say, well, what would serve me? And that would be powerful thinking. That would be causative thinking, being at cause rather than at effect. Okay? So we train our minds by practice to do this. We pivot and make sure that the thoughts we have, this isn't just positive thinking, oh, everything's going to be fine, let's all sing kumbaya. It's not that. We're thinking powerfully, tactically, and practically in order to get what we want. And so that is containing the warrior mind. We keep centered, we stay centered, we stay focused. And how do we do it? Through practice. Ultimately, the way to relinquish fear is to relinquish attachment to the outcome. And that doesn't mean I'm going to give up and just surrender and die of starvation, but I'm not attached to the outcome. And so that gives me tactical objectivity. Then I can move and do whatever I need to do. For example, many of the, remember the Japanese, the kamikaze, they were crazy. I mean, when you think like crazy, how did the Indians fight? They didn't line up colonially. Remember, they would all line up in lines and shoot at each other. And it's stupid. They had to jump out of the trees, right? So we need to think. We need to think in terms of unconventional wisdom as well. So keeping our minds focused on not being emotional and just training ourselves through practice. It's all done through practice. Just simply ask yourself, does this serve me? What thinking would best serve me? What can I do? And there's many things you can do. You can make a list of the things you need, go after them, and keep a schedule. Now is the time, if you're stuck at home, to focus on all the things you've been putting off and use it as a productive time to get things done, to make plans for your future, to understand this isn't going to last forever. We don't know how long, but it's not going to last forever. It's going to be a time that we'll look back, kind of like we look back at 9/11, right? There will come a time when it'll pass.
I agree, and I think that us as a nation, we're going to learn a lot from this. We've never really gone through something like this before, but whether it be an event like 9/11, now a pandemic like this, next time this happens and it's even more serious, we're going to be like 10 times more prepared. So I think that's the news we can take from here.
Absolutely, and I think we'll also learn independence. Most of our vaccines and things like that come out of China, I've heard, and so we're going to learn to be more independent. I'm a strong believer that we should be independent, have our own food sources, our own water sources. Maybe we need to reevaluate everything to make sure that we're strong. Ultimately, we need strength. And so,
and I think that, look, we've seen all of that fentanyl coming in here from China and all of the bad stuff they've been doing to not only their people, but everyone. And, look, for us to get less involved with, frankly, an enemy of the free world would be an absolutely wonderful thing. And I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So, let me transition real quick and ask you a question that's been on every martial artist's mind that I've talked to. Should we still be training right now? Should we be going to jiu-jitsu or JKD or boxing?
Well, absolutely. Here's what I think, and by the way, I'm certainly no doctor, so this is just my personal opinion. As an author, as a philosopher, as a martial artist, I believe in engaging life and not fearing. But yesterday we went to a kid's birthday party. A friend had a birthday party for their kid. They said, are you coming? I said, absolutely, we're coming. We're not going to live in fear. Now, that's us. Now, I have friends who disagree. They say, look, They want everyone to have social distance because they don't want to overwhelm the hospitals. And I understand that point of view. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but for me, for us, we believe in not living in fear. And many people may have already had it. I never get a cold. And a few months ago, we all had colds around here, bad colds. Maybe we had it and it left. There's no way knowing. They say many people who've had it won't be hospitalized, won't experience these things. It's primarily the elderly, the sickly, and the super young whose immunities aren't developed. So for me, I would recommend training. Now, I train solo quite a bit, and many of our students do as well. I'm sure you've seen our DVDs and things like that. You can train solo. You absolutely can. Not that there isn't a value in the relationship of sparring or at a gym or at a dojo. There's certainly a great value there, but you can train alone as well, and I often do that with my bags, with my wooden dummy, with my own katas. I mean, I practice a lot alone to keep my razor's edge sharp. I don't want to be dull. I want to keep my skills sharp. So you can train alone. Matter of fact, we have a whole CD on that in the Complete Combat
course. A couple of weeks, and say, hey, listen, it's quarantine. I'm just going to sit around and eat freaking chips on my couch. There's no excuse for that. You could be doing whatever it is you need to do, whether it's burpees and push-ups or your martial training on your own bag or whatever, all by yourself.
Right, absolutely. Make use of the time. Time is valuable, so use it. Virus or not, you should be training yourself, keeping yourself sharp. It's okay to relax once in a while, but when people sit around and wait is a problem. Don't wait. Start now. Train now. Strengthen your mind sword and your body sword. Your mind is a weapon. Your body is a weapon. Strengthen it. Sharpen it. Train it. And make good use of the time. And you can absolutely do those things, obviously at a gym or at a dojo, but more so even alone. Even alone. We have a whole CD on training alone in the combat course that I did with Damian Ross of the Self-Defense Company. Whole hour-long discussion on that, because you really can train alone. A lot of people poo-poo that idea, but they're mistaken. They're mistaken. Some of the greatest techniques and things that I've learned and even applied in real life, I've learned and trained alone.
I'd like to check out that program. Now, for guys out there, I want to encourage y'all not only to practice your martial skills, your physical skills, but your mental skills as well. If you haven't done a lot of research into NLP or the mental warfare aspects of martial arts, the higher level aspects of martial arts, now is the perfect time. You don't always just have to go out there and do push-ups and throw punches. It's also about the psychology, where this is what, Scott, you specialize in, I know, is mental warfare. Can you give us a little something about what exactly is it? How exactly can we train it?
Well, we train the mind through pivoting. One thing I always say is, and I want to make a very clear distinction, because people go, that positive thinking. I don't necessarily believe in that. I believe in powerful thinking and tactical thinking. So that the mind is essentially a weapon, and fear does not serve us. Fear is not your friend. Sometimes people will say, what do you mean? I was walking down the street, there's a truck bearing down on me, I was afraid, I jumped out of the way and saved my life. No, that wasn't fear. That was adrenaline. That was adrenaline. You moved, and then afterwards you went, oh, and you felt the fear. Oh my God. But during that moment, you didn't fear. You actually had adrenaline to take action. And that's the thing. If you had fear, you would have frozen up like a deer in the headlights and stared at that truck as it mowed you down. So we want to understand fear never serves us, and it's the goal of the enemy to break our tempo, to break our mental tempo, and assert their tempo as the dominant force, the dominant factor in your energetic field. Now, I know that might sound kind of esoteric, but it's really not. When you get down to it, we're all made of energy, and we're all influencing and affecting each other's energy. So when you get an attacker, they want to break your tempo, if you will. You know how Bruce Lee talks about the broken rhythm method? So, for example, in a fist fight, you see guys punching like this, so you get between, right? You get between and kind of break the rhythm. It's the same thing mentally. They want to throw you off balance mentally. They want to upset you with anger. There are lust ploys, greed ploys, all the common emotions that people will use to try to throw you off emotionally. When you think about boxers who line up before a fight, right? They get nose to nose, or football players, they line up, the quarterbacks are all facing off, and what are they doing? They're cussing each other out. They're insulting each other's mothers, right? Why are they doing that? Because they want to anger you, to throw you off your emotional balance. Because if you're thrown off of your emotional balance, you won't be as effective. And they know that. I mean, think about it. When you're ever in anger and rage, you ever screw up, make mistakes, say the wrong thing? Well, absolutely. We've all been there. And so that's the goal of the attacker, is to throw you off emotionally. So when you train yourself to think tactically and to not respond emotionally, Your emotional response transfers control to your attacker. That's one of the master keys of mental warfare secrets. You train yourself not to respond emotionally, so instead you breathe. You control your breathing. So when someone says something to you that would normally be upsetting, you retrain your mind by taking a catch breath, breathing and remembering your center. Maybe, for example, the Kimpo salute, strength and wisdom, right? So the warrior and the scholar, you take a breath, okay, and say, what would be the tactical response, if a response is required at all? And then essentially you're controlling the ball, kind of like a ball game. You got the ball. You don't have to hand it off. You don't have to hand it back. You can control it, even sit on the ball if you want. Then you're in charge of the game. So it's done through practice and simple techniques like I just described, not responding emotionally, breathing instead, controlling your state, controlling your physiology, your very body. If you'll notice, when you're pissed, you're tense. When you're sad, you're looking down. How about looking upward? You'll notice a difference just by changing your body and breathing. You literally change your emotions. That's very powerful stuff. And the powers that be don't want that known. They want you to think that they're, pardon me, I'm wiping my nose here during coronavirus, right? They want you to think that you're not in control of your emotions, and so you need a pill or you need to be controlled. We can control our vessel. We can control our emotions as certainly as we control our body. Look, I just made a fist. I controlled it. It's the same way with your mind. You can control your mind in the same way, and you can choose the emotional response you want to have. I'm not saying be like Spock, although that's not a bad idea. Spock is a pretty sharp guy, but we can control our emotions in the same way. We can respond logically and objectively as a warrior. See, I describe a warrior as one who fights for their own self-mastery. You might think of a warrior as a soldier and a cop, and that's true also, but ultimately a warrior is one who fights for their own self-mastery. So if someone attacks me on the street, they're trying to master myself. They're trying to master me. So I'll fight for my own self-mastery in that way. I'll harness and direct energy to fight for my own self-mastery. I describe fight as harnessing and directing energy. So a warrior is literally one who harnesses and directs energy for their own self-mastery. Now that could be in street combat, or it could be negotiating in the boardroom. It's the same thing. Life is war. And so that's an acronym for We Are Ready. And when we harness and direct and learn to control our energy through these simple practices, we become more objective, we become more effective at getting what we want, navigating the way we want, and not being at the effect of everyone else's attack. But and a lot of the attacks too, they can be political, it can be the fake news, it can be energy vampires, friends who don't, a lot of people don't realize that they're attacking, kind of like vampire bite. They don't realize they've been bitten, so they're on automatic. It can be intentional or it can be unintentional. But either way, the effect is the same. It's an attack on our energy. So we use these practices to retain and control our energy, to harness and direct energy for our own self-mastery. I hope I explained that in a way that was simple enough to understand.
I mean, for me, I was 100%, man. And honestly, I think that it's so key what you're telling people. And most guys out there in the martial arts, they got the DVDs about, the secret elbow strike that's going to freaking explode the guy's sinus cavity, but they don't talk about the real stuff, this stuff. Now, is your DVD, your CD about mental warfare still available for guys out there?
Mental Warfare Secrets is available at mentalwarfaresecrets.com. And then the physical fighting is CompleteCombat.com. And what we're going to do, matter of fact, because of this crisis, we want people training at home. Whereas we just had to cancel our May seminar. Russell Stutley was coming over from Cambodia, and they won't let him fly, so we had to cancel the event, which was going to be in May. But people can still train digitally, both physically and mentally. And we're also going to put a massive discount. By the time you get this out there, it'll be up a coupon code that says We Are Ready. So if they enter We Are Ready in all caps, there'll be a massive discount off the price of Mental Warfare Secrets and Complete Combat, off of both. We want people trained. We want people strong. And the more knowledge, in a violent crisis or any type of crisis, you're not going to rise to your level of expectation or your daydream. You're going to fall to your level of training and knowledge. So that's what we do. And our job is to get that knowledge out there, to get that training out there, and make people strong.
Yeah, and for guys out there, Scott has a way of teaching that literally gets you to a high level quick. It's not the type of thing where you have to keep buying stuff and keep freaking, listening to it over and over. That helps to listen to it over and over. But Scott, when I first started getting his stuff, I was kind of getting really quick to a higher level of that understanding of mental warfare and defending myself, mentally, emotionally, a lot quicker than a lot of other teachers out there. So Scott has a specific way of teaching, and part of it is that broken rhythm method that he utilizes from his JKD background that is very effective. Now, let me ask you this, dude, like the media. You mentioned about the media, and this ties in quite nicely. Are they manipulating us, and do they want us fearful? And if so, what?
Hell yeah. A passive populace is easier to control, which is a centralized populace. That's why they focus on centralization, hypersexuality, things like that. As well, a panicked or fearful populace is easy to control. So that is the purpose of that, is to make us fearful, because when we fear, we contract. We don't expand, we contract. Like I said earlier, if you're in a fit of rage, you might make a mistake. Well, likewise, when you're afraid, you'll make mistakes. Fear is not your friend. It doesn't serve you. I'm going to say, look, if I'm in a burning building right now, certainly I'm going to feel the fear of being burned alive, right? So what do I have to do? I have to take action. I have to suspend that fear and jump through that window or run through that burning door, knowing I might get burnt a little bit, but at least I'll survive. So I want to make it very clear, fear really isn't our friend. It's not. And the media will use that to the nth degree. It's already been proven. I mean, it's so bad. It's just ridiculous. It's blatant now. It's just obvious. Before it was a little more subtle, a little more covert. Now it's just overt because they've gotten desperate. And so I think more and more people are beginning to see that there's just a lot of bullshit out there in the media. We need to be objective. We need to be rational. We need to be strong. We don't need hypersensualization. We don't need panic and fear. We need strength and power and objectivity and wisdom. And that's not what the media is dealing. They're just dealing fear, 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 sensuality, sensuality. So they either want us hypersensualized to the point where we're not focusing on what is important, or they want us afraid, which again, we're not focusing on what is important. It weakens us either way. So that's the purpose of it, is to weaken us, because a passive populace or a fearful populace is easier to control and manipulate.
Now, were they using NLP techniques, the news anchors, like while they talk to us? Are they trying to actively hypnotize us?
I believe that is their intention, although it's not necessarily they're not necessarily aware that it is their intention. Okay. People repeat certain things. I can't say whether they're trained. I don't really see that so much. I see more of a desperation and a kind of a salesmanship. It's almost gone National Enquirer now. You know what I mean? Remember the hype and headlines and the three-headed stepchild of Elvis and things like that, right? Yeah. Crazy stuff. Well, that's becoming more and more to mainstream, where it's not actually news, it's op-ed. That's opinion editorial. So rather than news, like saying this happened in the news, they're giving their opinion in their editorial, their op-ed. So it's not news, it's op-ed. They're giving their opinion and telling us. They're not giving us the information. Otherwise, they'd simply be reading on a list. Today, this happened. Today, the stock market crashed to this. Today, this plane crashed. Today, this good thing, whatever happened. But instead, they're trying to tell us why, how, and how we should feel about it, and what happened, and well, maybe it's Trump's fault because he wiped his nose during a convention or something, right? Or he burped or something like that. And so they very much try to shape our opinions and our feelings. Remember, any attack on your emotions is an attack on your balance. And if they're making an emotional appeal, if they're using emotion, instead of just, what happened to just the facts, ma'am? Like in Dragnet, right? Just the facts, ma'am. That's it. And that's how the news should be. It'd be just the facts. We don't need their opinion or editorial. We just need the facts. That's called the news, what really happened. So I don't know that they're necessarily trained. They're certainly desperate, and they're certainly silver-tongued talkers. They can be very smooth and eloquent. But I think overall it's backfiring. I think people are waking up to the news, and that's why the ratings have come so far down. Yeah. I mean, and the viewership has come so far down. And even when we see, for example, actors, the Academy Awards, the Oscars, the Grammys, whatever the heck that was, and you have actors coming out there giving their political opinions. Well, hey, how about thank you for this honor? Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks to my team. Thanks to my family. You all have a great night. No, instead, they're going to get on and talk about some political cause. And so it's almost an insult to our intelligence. For example, people will pay me for my teachings, for my opinion. I don't try to sway them or give my personal opinion on the ecology or saving the whales or anything like that. Right? So likewise, an actor, we paid you to entertain us, to give us some escape for a movie for a couple of hours. What made you think that you can now inform us of the geopolitical situation? What made you think that you have special knowledge in that area. You don't. You're a good actor. You're a talented actor. So we just want that, and that's why the viewership on those things has just crashed. I think the desperation and the obviousness is becoming more and more apparent, and so that condescending attitude where they feel that they have superior knowledge simply because they have fame, I think more and more that's beginning to fade, and we're getting people who are warrior minded. I think there's actually a strengthening and an awakening going on. I actually feel positive about that.
People are waking up, and Americans are getting that resilient, independent attitude once again that we've been lacking for the past, I don't know, at least decade or so, for whatever reason. But it's interesting. The last statistic I saw about that was about 63% of people believe the media is straight up lying to them and don't believe it.
Yeah. And who knows, it's probably worse, right? Because even those polls are skewed, right? So it's probably, or I should say better, it's better that more people know. And they don't want hype, they don't want fear, they just want the facts. That's all we want. It's not isolationist, it's not negative at all. Live and let live. Everyone can live the way they want, but the moment that the media is trying to cause us to fear, they're actually trying to divide us and cause us to fear. And when you get into it, it's more and more, I think they're just exposing themselves, and they're losing. There could come a day within a few years where CNN is out of business because they just don't have the viewership.
That'd be great.
Right.
I typically watch international news sources now because you can't get news from domestic news channels. They just don't report the news. It's all about what Trump's doing, and pretty much all about what Trump's doing. I mean, I don't care what he's doing. Like, as long as he's, not killing us and doing a decent job, like, let the man operate. But personally, I can't get news about what's going on outside our country, domestically anymore.
Yeah, it's gotten rabid, which is really a shame because I also believe in respect in the office. While I disagreed with his policies, I would respect Obama's in the office, and if I met him, I would be a gentleman, because there's no need for emotional panic, hatred, fear, all this hyper emotionalization. It takes away from just the actual factual logic of the whole thing. And actually, I believe it's really backfired on them. It just makes them look absurd and ridiculous. And got a dog there.
He's going a little crazy for some reason.
A dog is a good thing to have too, by the way. Survival-wise, they're a great alarm. They're a great first line of defense. Someone kicks down your door, that dog is going to jump in for you. If he's a good dog, he's going to jump in for you, and also going to warn you, wake you up. So I think
absolutely, and that actually brings me into the next topic I want to discuss with you is, should this thing go, even a little bit haywire, and we see, things take a turn slightly for the worse before they get better.
Yes.
What home security tips could you give us? What things like that could we be doing to actively start preparing?
Well, in addition to, a lot of people have security companies who monitor. I've always gotten self-monitored, so mine are battery operated. So if someone kills my power, those things are still going to work. And they're going to dial me and dial my neighbor, and I have a whole chain of dialing that occurs. Because I'm going to be quicker as a first responder than a mall cop, right, in a car a half hour away. Not that those things aren't good in themselves, but that's what I prefer. Also, having a good dog is a good start of line. I recommend that every law-abiding home have a firearm and someone trained in its safe and effective use. The training is equally as important. Otherwise, you have a paperweight. A lot of people have a false confidence in a gun. They buy a gun and they feel safe, but they're not trained to use it under duress. I think that training is crucially important. That gets overlooked a lot just from the purchase of the object itself. So there is that. Obviously, having a common sense, effective firearm like a small pistol, I think, is more effective for a home defense than would be a rifle. Is more of a long distance thing. There are people who would disagree with that. Did we disconnect? Let's see.
Keys to pass.
Oh, there we go. We disconnected for just a minute. We're back?
No problem. We are back.
Okay, cool. So
you were actually leaving off, I think, talking about common sense type of firearms that we could have versus something kind of crazy.
Right, exactly. Common sense and having the proper preparations. It doesn't take much. A few $100s in rice beans and some big 5-gallon water buckets, a fire source so you could cook. If, let's say, the power went out, just completely went out. We've got the ability to cook. We've got charcoals and things like that. We could heat water. We can cook food. Just having common sense stuff. It's very basic. You don't need a bunker. You don't need to invest thousands and thousands of dollars. For a few $100, most families can be prepared sensibly. And that's the thing. And so if it does, say, if power does go out and things do get bad, we can survive in place. We could stay where we had to for at least a couple of months easily, if not longer. And so I believe almost any crisis will probably not last longer than a couple of months. I could be wrong on that. Of course, we're seeing things we've never seen before, right? Same with 9/11. I was in LA during the LA riots. I saw that. So I've always been very objective and practical. I think practicality is the key. Make a list it out, plan it out. Think of the things you need. I think certain children or certain people might need certain medications. They should plan for that as well. If they have, say, medications that they're legitimately prescribed, they might want to stock up on those, things like that. Make a list of the things you need and go about, how could I get this? What are other ways? What are other resources? And so think outside the box. Make your list of the things you need. Prepare objectively. Have a plan. I mean, if things get bad to where, say, people are going home to home, you need to defend your home, then you're going to have watch where certain people sleep during certain times and certain people are awake during certain times to be able to ring the alarm, right? Common sense, things like that.
Now, as a martial arts Hall of Famer, I got to ask you this one because, unfortunately, we've seen more than openly blatant attacks on our Second Amendment over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Mm-hmm. And there are people out there who can't get their hands on a firearm for whatever reason. Is there something that we could be doing to actively prepare for an engagement without having the access to the firearms? Mm-hmm.
There are many alternatives. I know that in some areas it's almost impossible, even if you're a law-abiding citizen, to get a firearm. Mace, tasers, things like that. Matter of fact, I like mace for multiple attackers. Of course, a good, solid, tactical folding knife can hold off multiple attackers. So there's mace, there's knives, there's practical weaponry that can be. You always want to abide by the laws in your locality wherever you are, so you stay out of trouble. But within each locality, there tends to be some kind of laws that will allow for some kind of defensive weapon to defend your home and family. And so if you can't get that at mace, as far as I know, I could be wrong, as far as I know, it's legal almost everywhere. I've seen mace and pepper spray. Matter of fact, the one I just got recently was made by Smith & Wesson, a mace made by them, or at least they licensed their logo to it, so it could be of a decent quality. Mace, pepper spray, tasers, things like that can hold off multiple attackers. Also being armed, if you know how to use a stick fighting is a great way to hold off multiple attackers. Or a knife.
Yeah, reason to train.
And again, it comes to training. Even a knife, if you don't know how to use it, you've almost got a paperweight there. I mean, your odds, it's an equalizer, so your odds are a little better. But when you're trained, then they're a lot better. So I recommend a rubber training knife so you can train on how to use it, how to retain it. I've had so many people lose the rubber knife because they're holding it like this, nice and loose. You got to hold that right. Just the basic stuff that people overlook that we take for granted. So if we don't take it for granted and we think practically and tactically and objectively, think, okay, mace is a good one. We've got daughters. Mace is a great one. A truck pulls up, a van pulls up to try to take my daughter. They're going to be in for a nasty surprise. And that's how it should be. I would hope that everyone would train their children how to defend themselves. Everything from using the cell phone. The cell phone can take out someone's teeth. Boom, right there. Just that thing in your hand right there.
Yeah. Huh. And it's those common sense things that, not everyone might think about. I know we've got a lot of professional, military, ex-military, martial artists, first responders that watch us, but we've also got a huge audience of people that, they're just kind of starting off in this as well. So the more tips like that you can come across, the more research you do for yourself. And again, the more training you get, which is available. Is that still available at scottbolan.com, the kind of landing site?
That is the opt-in there. Mental Warfare Secrets is at mentalwarfaresecrets.com. And then Complete Combat is at CompleteCombat.com. And if they put in "We Are Ready," we're going to put some crazy, massive discount. And then I would just encourage people to realize, everyone from Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War, to Bruce Lee, to modern MMA coaches like Greg Jackson have all said the fight is won or lost in the mind first. So having a strong mind, having that warrior's mind, that fighter's mind, that what they call it the killer instinct, the spirit. When you have a fighting spirit, your odds of survival are so much higher. That's been proven from the ancients to the modern ones. They all see that. They all know that. Having that spirit. So strengthen your spirit, mind, and body, and the odds of you prevailing are increased abundantly.
And that's kind of been a theme. I've been interviewing some real serious cats out there, professional warriors, special secret squirrels and everything, and they've all been saying the first thing, number one, mindset. That's the most important thing before you do anything else.
Absolutely.
So that always resonates. Hear that. And guys, I can't stress this enough. I don't endorse things that are bullshit. I don't endorse things that I don't respect and don't like. But when I do find something that I think is of value, high value to you, I always endorse it. So that's why I'm having Scott on to come and talk about, his thoughts about pandemic, and also just in general, how can we prepare for not even just a shit hit the fan situation, but something like what we're facing now, where it's getting a little dicey, and we want to really get that extra edge. And I think that Scott, your stuff is a great way to do that.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Coming on, man. I appreciate it 100%. Take the time and talk to our guys.
A pleasure, brother. Absolutely a pleasure. So I wish everyone safety and strength out there. That's my mission in life, to give people empowerment and strength. And that's what you're doing with your show as well. Well, it's coming along great, man. Some great stuff. I'm really enjoying it, getting a lot out of it, man.
Guys, please remember, until next time, that you are your first and last line of defense, and I will see you on the next Tactical Podcast. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.